My friends, I want to begin today by asking a question that's been echoing in my mind for decades. A question so simple yet so explosive that it shakes the foundation of everything we've been taught to accept without question. How does nobody realize this? How does nobody realize that the very system we live under, the one that shapes our jobs, our income, our education, even our sense of self-worth, was not designed for us? It was designed for profit, for power, for a small group of people who have convinced the rest of us that this is just how things are. How does nobody realize this? How does nobody see that the world we wake up to each morning, the jobs we rush to, the prices we pay, the stress that weighs on our shoulders is not some natural order of things, but a system carefully built, maintained, and justified by those who benefit from it most? We are told from childhood that this is just how the economy works. We're told that success is a matter of personal effort, that those who make it deserve it, and those who don't simply didn't try hard enough. But if that were true, why is it that no matter how hard millions of people work, they still struggle to pay for rent, health care, and education? Why is it that the harder we labor, the richer someone else becomes? There's a truth hidden in plain sight, and the greatest act of rebellion is simply to see it. The system we live in wasn't handed down from the heavens. It was built, designed by human beings for specific purposes. It serves a class structure that rewards ownership over labor, capital over creativity, profit over people. And the genius of the system is not just in how it operates, but in how it convinces us that it cannot be changed. We internalize the logic of our own oppression. We say, that's just business. We shrug at layoffs, at rising costs, at burnout, as though they were natural phenomena like rain or gravity, when in fact they are the direct outcomes of choices made by human beings, often behind closed doors, in boardrooms most of us will never enter. Here's the hook, the moment of awakening. Once you realize that the economy is not a law of nature, but a man-made construct, you realize something even more powerful. It can be remade. If human beings built this system, human beings can build a better one. And that realization is the most radical, dangerous, and liberating thought a person can have. Because when you see that the walls confining you are imaginary, you stop obeying them. You stop blaming yourself for problems that were never yours to solve alone. You begin to understand that the economy is not happening to you. It is something happening through you, and therefore something you have a right to influence. Most people don't see it because they've been trained not to. The education system teaches obedience, not understanding. The media celebrates billionaires as geniuses instead of questioning the structure that allows them to hoard while others go hungry. We've been conditioned to admire power, even when that power exploits us. It's a psychological trick, one that keeps us invested in our own exploitation, cheering for economic growth that never seems to reach our pockets. The tragedy isn't that people are blind, it's that they've been blinded. And yet, history is filled with moments when ordinary people woke up, when workers, students, and communities began to see the strings being pulled and decided they would no longer dance to someone else's tune. That's when change happens. That's when the impossible becomes possible. The first revolution is not fought in the streets, it's fought in the mind. It begins with a question: why do we accept a system that doesn't serve the majority? The moment you start asking that question, you begin to pull on a thread that can unravel the entire illusion. So wake up, look around you. Every rule, every policy, every economic reality you've been told to accept was made by someone and can be unmade by you and others like you. You have far more power than you've been led to believe. The system thrives on your silence, on your exhaustion, on your belief that you are powerless. But the truth, the revolutionary truth, is that you are not. The moment you open your eyes, the system trembles. And that is why awakening is the most dangerous and the most beautiful act of all. You create the value, so claim your power. How often do we stop and ask ourselves what that really means? Every day, Millions of people across the world wake up before dawn, work long hours, build products, provide services, and keep entire societies functioning. Yet at the end of the day, the rewards, the profits, the recognition, the control belong to someone else. The world applauds the executives and the shareholders, but the truth, the simple truth that no one seems to realize is this: without the labor of ordinary people, nothing moves, nothing grows, nothing works. You are not just a cog in the machine, you are the machine. And the moment you realize that, everything changes. Think about it. Every building you enter, every road you drive on, every piece of technology you use, every item you purchase, all of it was made possible by someone's labor, not by capital alone, not by management alone, but by the combined effort of millions who put their time, skill, and energy into creating value. Yet in our system, the people who do the work rarely get the fair share of what they produce. The gap between effort and reward has grown so vast that it now defines our lives. You work harder, the company profits more, but somehow you don't move forward. The logic is upside down, yet we're told to accept it as normal. Here's the hook: the system depends on your compliance with that lie. Once you understand that your labor is the source of all value, you begin to see through the illusion that those at the top are the wealth creators. No, the true creators are those who build, serve, and sustain: the teachers, the drivers, the farmers, the engineers, the nurses, the factory workers, the cleaners. These are the people who make civilization possible. And yet, we've been conditioned to believe that our worth depends on how high we climb within a structure that was never designed for us to reach the top. The ladder is tilted, and every rung we climb enriches the people who built it, not the people climbing it. Here's what they don't want you to realize: if workers around the world simply stopped working for a single day, the entire global economy would grind to a halt. That's how powerful you are. The markets, the profits, the industries, all of it rests on your shoulders. You are the foundation. And yet, instead of realizing this collective strength, we are divided by job titles, by status, by nationality, by race, told to compete with one another rather than recognize that we all share the same struggle. Divide and distract. That's how the system maintains control. But when people wake up to their power, history shifts. When workers in Argentina took over abandoned factories and ran them cooperatively, productivity didn't fall, it soared. When communities in Europe created worker-owned businesses, they didn't just survive, they thrived. Why? Because when those who create the value also control the value, motivation changes from fear to pride. Work becomes not just survival, but participation, a voice, a purpose, a stake in the outcome. That's what real empowerment looks like, and it terrifies those who sit at the top. So the challenge is not just to work hard, but to work consciously. Every time you step into your workplace, remember you are not powerless. The system would have you believe that you are replaceable, that you should be grateful just to have a job. But the truth is, your work is what makes that job possible in the first place. Without you, there is no business, no profit, no progress. That realization is the spark that ignites transformation, not just personal, but collective. When people understand their value, they stop begging for dignity and start demanding justice. The power has always been in your hands, not in the boardroom, not on Wall Street, but in the millions of ordinary people who make the world function every single day. Claim that power. Speak it, live it. Because when you recognize that you are the creator of value, you no longer live at the mercy of those who exploit it. You stop asking for permission to exist, and you start shaping the future that should have been yours all along. Stop accepting injustice as normal. That sentence alone, if truly understood, can change the course of a life. We live in a world where inequality has been dressed up as meritocracy, where exploitation is hidden behind the language of efficiency and growth, and where suffering is rationalized as an unfortunate but necessary side effect of progress. But progress for whom? Growth for whom? Every generation has been told the same comforting story: that the system may not be perfect, but it's the best we can do. And yet, look around. The richest people on the planet hoard more wealth than entire nations, while millions struggle to survive paycheck to paycheck. How does nobody realize that this is not a mistake in the system? It is the system. Here's the hook. The greatest trick power ever pulled was convincing people that their suffering was their own fault. When wages stagnate, they tell you to get more education. When prices rise, they tell you to work harder. When you burn out, they tell you to take responsibility for your mindset. But the problem is not in your attitude. It's in an economic structure that takes your productivity and returns you anxiety, that rewards greed while punishing need. The system survives because we have been conditioned to see injustice as inevitable. We're told it's the cost of doing business, as though injustice were a law of nature instead of a design of human greed. Think of how often we see unfairness and simply shrug. The billionaire who pays less tax than a teacher, the company that lays off workers after a record-breaking profit, the landlord who raises rent while refusing to fix the roof. These are not random acts of misfortune. They are choices made possible because the rest of us have been taught to accept them. We've been told that questioning these realities makes us naive, that wanting fairness makes us radical. But tell me, what could be more rational than demanding that those who create value share in it? What could be more logical than insisting that a system built by human hands should serve human beings? The truth is, injustice thrives in silence. It depends on our resignation. The system doesn't fear your anger, it fears your awareness. Because once you recognize that the rules are not sacred, that they were written by people with interests, you begin to realize you have the right to rewrite them. That's where transformation begins, in the mind that refuses to normalize what is fundamentally wrong. History's greatest changes didn't start with politicians or CEOs. They started when ordinary people stopped accepting the unacceptable, when they said no to child labor, to slavery, to segregation, to exploitation. Each of those victories began with one simple, revolutionary act: refusing to accept injustice as normal. And here's another hook. Every time you accept less than you deserve, the system becomes stronger. Every time you convince yourself that this is just how it is, you build another wall around your own freedom. But when you open your eyes, when you start to see inequality not as destiny but as design, those walls begin to crack. Because injustice cannot survive exposure. It cannot survive when people start to connect the dots between their personal struggles and the larger structure that produces them. You see, the power of the system lies in isolation. It wants you to think your problems are individual, not collective, that your debt, your job insecurity, your stress are personal failures instead of symptoms of something much larger. But once you realize that millions are facing the same struggles, the illusion collapses. The problem isn't that you're not working hard enough. The problem is that your hard work is being siphoned into someone else's pocket. Once you see that clearly, you stop blaming yourself and start questioning the structure that created this imbalance in the first place. To stop accepting injustice as normal is not an act of rebellion, it is an act of sanity. It is the first step toward reclaiming your dignity in a world that profits from your silence. The moment you decide that inequality is not inevitable, that your worth is not measured by how much profit you generate for someone else, you begin to break the spell that has kept so many trapped for so long. Because injustice at its core is not sustained by the power of the few, but by the consent of the many. And the moment you withdraw that consent, the moment you refuse to accept it any longer, the system begins to tremble. So I say to you today, stop accepting what you are told is normal. Start realizing what has been hidden in plain sight. The moment we recognize that the economy is ours, that we built it, sustain it, and can transform it, is the moment we begin to reclaim our dignity as human beings.